Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your words, and I'm glad to see that the Obama administration is making Indian issues a higher priority than previous administrations, but that's not saying so much. Let's face it, Indian affairs has never been a priority in the federal budget. From Indian health to education to law enforcement, we have seen woefully inadequate funding across the board. This year, I'm glad to see that the Bureau of Indian Affairs budget has prioritized important provisions like contract support for tribal governments, but unfortunately, as the chairman pointed out so graphically, it has come at the expense of the construction budget, even accounting for the transfer of over $51 million from construction operations. There's an almost $9 million decrease in Indian school construction. Our office asked for a list of school construction projects. The most recent list we could get is from 2004. It's the most recent list we could get. And since 2004, we haven't even gotten through the list of 14 schools that BIA identified as the worst of the worst and in need of replacement. We simply haven't made school construction a priority in the budget. The chairman spoke to the condition of these schools, about the danger of life and limb to students and teachers. And as a result of not making this a priority, we see schools like the Circle of Life School at White Earth Reservation in northwest Minnesota. We see that school, one of the 14 that was on that list, still waiting. Still waiting. We've had enough money in the budget to finish only one or two schools every few years. How are we ever going to get to the $1.3 billion backlog just to bring Indian schools across the country into acceptable condition? Last week I visited the Leech Lake Reservation in Minnesota, where the Bugo Negi Chig School is, and it is one of 64 schools that are waiting for funding in this backlog. They have been waiting for years. The reality is that Indian schools and Indian issues in general just have not been a federal funding priority. And though the Obama administration has done more than those in the past, particularly the previous one, there is much, much more to do. Thank you.
I'll also begin with Senator Franken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you. Beyond the lack of funding for school construction, there is a transparency issue. BIA has a metric called the Facilities Construction Index, or FCI, that uses to assess the condition of each particular school on its school construction list. As a senator, when I ask for a list of schools with the FCI for each school, I get it. But the tribes and the general public don't get to see the list with the FCI. Now, I understand that there is a No Child Left Behind rulemaking process to come up with a way to prioritize Indian schools for construction, and I'm glad that's moving forward in this administration. But that process is going to take at least another year. In the meantime, the public needs to know the dismal conditions that these schools are in. Only when people know what's happening will there be an impetus to make school construction a priority in the budget. Secretary Echohawk, while we are waiting for the NCLB rulemaking process, is BIA willing to post online the full list of 64 Indian schools in need of replacement or repair with the FCI for each?
Thank you, Senator Franken. I believe in transparency. The school replacement construction priority list formulated in 2004 is now being reviewed in that negotiating rulemaking committee, and that is a transparent process. I think there is one other list known as poor condition. It is not a priority list. It is a list that's been generated to identify just what the needs are. And
Will you publish that list with the FCI of each?
Senator Franken, that list is on the Bureau of Indian Affairs website.
Is it on with the FC? It's not on with the FCI.
Senator Franken, staff tells me that it is.
Okay, I'm told something different by my staff. This isn't the first time that I've been told something in these hearings about this list and about these lists that wasn't true.
Senator Franken, staff has told me that it was actually published yesterday.
Okay, well, my office was asking about this list, and now I kind of understand how that might have happened. I want to address the issue of costs. The Director of Facilities, Environmental, and Cultural Resources for Indian Affairs at the Department of Interior told my staff that it costs approximately $30 to $50 billion to replace a BIE school. There's only 52.8 million. I said it's 30 to 50 million. There's only 52.8 million in the president's budget for Indian school construction for the entire year. So we have this enormous cost per school and barely any money to fund it. Is the cost of replacing a BIE school comparable to the costs associated with schools in non-tribal areas? And if there is a difference, what accounts for it? Do you want to get back to me with a written?
Senator Franken, I have staff in the room that could answer that question in detail. We'd be happy to
Thank you.
communicate directly with your staff.
So I want to get, I'm running out of time, and I want to get to one last thing. This is about BIA detention facilities that are operations funding. Last week, I was at the Red Lake Reservation, in addition to being Leech Lake in northern Minnesota, and I saw their new juvenile detention minimum security facility, which was built 5 years ago, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's sat empty, though, for the last 5 years because the BIA has not provided funding for operations. This facility was built with Department of Justice funding under President Clinton's Indian Country Law Enforcement Initiative back in 1998. Is it true that under that initiative, the policy was that the Department of Justice would fund construction of detention facilities, and the Department of Interior agreed to seek funding for operating these facilities going forward? I have a copy of a letter from 1998 from then Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs Kevin Gover assuring tribal governments that the BIA Office of Law Enforcement Services would be responsible for requesting operational funding for each detention facility constructed by DOJ under the program. I also have a Department of Interior memo from 2000 clearly stating that, and I quote, "The Office of Law Enforcement Services will be responsible for requesting funds for staffing and program operations at these facilities." And I ask unanimous consent to submit both of these documents for the record, Mr. Chairman. Does the policy laid out under the Clinton administration's Indian Country Law Enforcement Initiative remain the policy of the Bureau of Indian Affairs today, sir?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Franken, I acknowledge that is the policy.
Okay, well, we have a facility that was built under that policy that is remained empty for 5 years because there's no money to operate it at all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.